All right, we just pulled in our two-door that we're going to start our midnight edition package on. So the first thing we're going to do is wheels and tires and a lift kit. So the transformation is going to happen pretty quick. So I can't wait to see how these things are going to turn out. It's going to be rad, man.
Hi, this is Dan with Maxlider Bros Customs, and we just finished installing our 4-inch lift kit for the 2021 Broncos. We installed it on our two-door Sasquatch package Badlands Bronco. We've worked really hard. Our guys did it today, and we'll show you in a minute how we did it. All right, first step on any install is going to be disconnect the battery so we don't accidentally set off the airbags. If you set off the airbags, it could potentially total the vehicle and you're done. So I'm going to do that first. We disconnect the negative cable so we don't have to worry about it shorting out to anything while we're removing or installing it. All right, the next thing we need to do is tie off the steering wheel so it doesn't rotate. We're going to be disconnecting the steering from the vehicle, and if we don't tie off the steering wheel is going to keep turning, and it could break the clock spring that's in behind the steering wheel, and that's very expensive to repair. So what we're going to do, I have a bungee cord. It's a convenient place to tie it off. Now the steering wheel can only turn a certain amount and it won't break the clock spring that's behind the wheel. All right, next step is to remove the wheels and tires from the vehicle. We have it already set up on the lift. We'll get it up in the air and we'll yank these things off. All right, the next step in installing the lift kit is to take the whole front suspension apart. We have to remove the brakes, disconnect the steering, the sway bar, and the rest of the suspension. All right, so the reason we tied off the steering wheel at one of the first steps is because we need to remove this steering shaft. We do that by taking this bolt out, which I've already loosened, and pulling the steering shaft up out of the way so this part can come down. Now we can take the bolt out that holds the upper A-arm, because otherwise it would not fit. So when that comes out, you can remove the upper control arm. All right, here we have the front struts already removed from the vehicle, and we've opened up the lift kit box, and here are the components that come with it. So for the front of the strut, we have the top spacers, we have the preload collars, which are going to be taller than your rear ones, and the bump stops are going to go in the strut. Also, the fronts are going to be taller than the ones for the rears, and then you'll have your bag of hardware. So before we get started, we need to remove the locating pin because we won't use that. So you see on this front strut, I've marked a line from this stud through the top hat, the isolator, the spring, through the bottom part of the spring, the isolator, and the collar, and also the strut body. We need to maintain this alignment because when we take this apart and put it back together again, the top hat needs to rotate 180 degrees, but everything else needs to stay in line. So now here we're going to disassemble the strut. It's very important that we use a quality strut compressor and use good tools because this is incredibly dangerous. There's a lot of potential energy stored in the spring, and if not done correctly, it could really hurt someone. All right, now that we've removed this from the spring and the top hat, we're going to disassemble the strut to install our preload spacer and our new bump stops. So here we have the top hat with the isolator spring. We're going to need to rotate that top plate 180 degrees. So what was there is now here. And now we're going to reinstall it all back together. Now the other side, yeah. All right, another important thing that we need to keep note of is that we need to trim the top of the studs with a good cutoff wheel, because when we put the hat on it, we need to make sure that the studs do not come higher than the top part of this plastic piece. Otherwise, when we install this on the vehicle and that is interfering against the frame, what happens is when you tighten these down, it'll crack the plastic, and that will no longer be any good, and you'd have to do this all over again. So we have to make sure that that stud is below the top of this plastic piece on all three sides. In your lift kit, you'll have new upper control arms. As you can see, it's a much better design. It's a lot stiffer. The geometry has been changed to help with fixing the geometry of the front end after the lift. But importantly, what we have here is the equivalent of the front upper ball joint. We call these misalignments. They need to come in, put into here, and put in here like this. The issue is there's powder coating on these two items. The powder coating needs to be removed for this to fit correctly in the slots. If you don't remove the powder coating and you try to drive it home with an arbor press or a big hammer, what you're going to do is you're going to end up messing up the ball that's in here, and it's going to bind the upper control arm. So you got to make sure we have to remove the powder off of these before installing it onto the vehicle. As you can see from this one compared to that one, I've pulled the powder coating off. After you do that process, you put the half round part in the top. And oh. Then it's easier to install. Drops right in. All right, so we have here the rear struts for this two-door lift kit, and the difference between the 2 and 4 doors is the 2-door lift kits, the rear struts need to be dismantled to install the preload spacer and the bump stop extension. And in a minute you'll see what we'll do with the 4 doors. We don't have to go through this process. We just put the hat right on top for the lift on the rears for the 4 doors. All right. So we'll use the short collar of the preload spacer, then the spring pocket or the spring seat, then the cover. Whoops. The bump stop and the collar, and then we can reassemble this onto the spring. All right, we have the rear struts for a 2-door Sasquatch truck and a 4-door Sasquatch truck. We've already put the preload spacer in it, and we put the taller bump stop in it. So on a 2-door Sasquatch, all we have to do from here is we make sure we cut the ends of the studs out, and we put the spacer in, and it stays below the level of the top. We'll nut this in, and then we'll put this back into the vehicle. However, on a 4-door, we don't have to take this apart to put the preload spacer in it, the collar at the bottom. All we do from here is, after it's removed from the vehicle, we put this top hat on it. Obviously these haven't been cut yet, but we will still need to trim the top of that so it stays below this. And then we get the metal collar. We put that on top of that, and then this is installed onto the vehicle. So now that you've installed the 4-inch lift kit on your 2021 Bronco, this is what it should look like. I hope the video is informative and helpful. Thank you.